All right, welcome back everyone to another weekly edition of Stock Market Mutterings. This is for the week ending on the 10th of September. Hope that your week was good trading, coming back from a nice little vacation on Labor Day. So hope everything went well with you. Today we're going to talk about this market. Is this market ready to die? Is the tariffs going to put the pressure on it finally and knock this thing down? I'm going to let you know here in just a second, but before I do, if you guys never need help with your trading, you're looking to take your trading to the next level, visit thelincolnlist.com, click on our Trade Room tab, and you can start trading with us right away. So let's look at the SPY as we always do with the weekly mutterings. And this thing just kind of walked slowly every day right on down into its 20 moving average. That's where we're sitting at right now. So if you're looking at the bottom chart, the green line right there is the 20 moving, simple moving average on a daily chart. We're just right on there. Got a small little green bounce off of that there Friday, albeit very mundane, but got one. So, it's not a big vicious sell-off that we saw this week. It was more methodic. We actually saw more in the NASDAQ component stocks. If you look at the NQs, I'll pull that up here for a second. The NASDAQ, it actually took most of the brunt here. You saw some big selling in some of these other names. So we'll see. Now let's just go back and take a look at the SPY since I had that up here. This 20 moving average is pretty important right now for this. That's the gauge that you have to go by. If we start going underneath of that early on in the week, the only thing you really have left for this is the 50 moving average, and right now that sits at about 282.50. So there's a possibility that if you get underneath of that, you start to see some more aggressive selling, some failed rallies, then possibly you can still rotate down there. I would look at that first. If things get really ugly, then possibly down to 279.50s, which was the low on 8/15. Just a couple of numbers to look at. It also was somewhat of a double bottom there going back to August 2nd. That's a little bit far away, but if we see that, then I would look down for a little bit more selling to start the week to take us down into that, especially if there's failed rallies. Now, if this thing just kind of shrugs it off like it has been, I mean, you saw a little bit of a pullback here in July. Kind of the same thing, a few days of selling down into the 20 moving average. It bounced. This just got slightly under the 20 moving average here. It bounces. Only time will tell. I'm not here to predict what will happen, but if you're looking at the overall market as a gauge to your positions and your investments and what you're doing, then if we get, we're at a decent spot here where you got to be looking at possibly rotating down to the 50 moving average there. So now let's move on to some stocks here that I think have some pretty good potential for trades. And the first one I want to talk about is Apple. Now this thing obviously has been in a monster run up since its earnings. It's just continually being accumulated, and it had a nice little sell-off going here for the last couple of days. Well, Friday, have this statement comes out about they'll be affected by these tariffs, and this thing takes a massive dump. 224 all the way down to 219 right now as I'm doing this after hours on a Friday. That's big for Apple. It's not Nvidia where it's just a normal move in that stock. That's pretty big. Now where that sits right now is the 20 moving average right underneath it here is 217. So you're just a few ticks away from this 20. And then you've got some base consolidation here where this thing traded between August 17th, and August 27th. You have some lows there that are around 212. So the way I'm looking at this, there could be two ways. Every trader is different. I'm just going to give you the way I'm looking at it, but you can trade it two different ways if you want. If this thing opens up with a flush, let's say we get a combination of a market sell-off from tariff news over the weekend, for example, or this bleeds out into Monday and you see a gap down and a flush. If you get down somewhere into this 20 moving average on a daily, more specifically, if you get down into this level of 214s to 212s, I would be a buyer down there, especially if that was the very first move that you saw on Monday, like if it was just an all-out panic flush. Now, if it takes a little bit longer time to get there, I would reevaluate the way I did that trade. But first, I'm looking at a possibly big panic move in this, a nice sell-off to get long. Maybe that doesn't happen, but that's what I'm looking at on this Apple right here. Now, you could short it if it does pop and you feel that it's going to go even lower, then be my guest. But I'm looking to pick this thing up if it flushes. Another one here that we talk about a lot is Tesla. Now, Tesla's reaching this point again where it's coming in. I mean, most of you already know the situation surrounding it. You got people leaving the company. You know, they're kicking the Musk while he's down. The funding secured tweet might have been jumping the shark for this company. I mean, it's just been battered. I mean, since that day, which we talked about a few weeks ago, this thing was 386. It's down $100+ since then. I mean, it's just a massacre in this name. But when you look at it more on a technical basis, you go back and you're looking at March and April. This is the lows of March and April, was around this 240, high 240s into the 250s. This thing got real close to that. So if you start to see, maybe it's not going to happen right away at the beginning of the week. You know, one of the things about Tesla is it pulls off these bounces. So like here, you have this selling off down into the support, and then it just bounces from this 289 to 324. So it just jams up for a few days. Then it begins a re-rotation down. So what I really want to look at, and the number you've got to be paying attention here if you're a trader of Tesla, is this high 240 area. You're going back into this. Man, if this thing loses it, if it loses it, I don't know how you can't think 200. Yes, 200. 200 doesn't get done. I mean, there's just air underneath of that thing. And I know it seems like it's a long way off, but hey, it's come down enough already, right? I mean, it could do it. So pay attention to that. Now, the flip side of it is if it does end up down there, I mean, you may end up doing the same thing as you have here the last few times and putting in a massive $20 to $30 bounce. Again, I'm not here to predict what's going to happen with Tesla, whether I'm bullish or bearish. I really don't care, but you are starting to come into some areas here that are super huge, and there's going to be some activity in this name. So just keep it up there on the watch. Pay really close attention to those high 240s. You get down there, you're either going to get one vicious bounce or that selling's going to continue on. Now, if you are following me on social media, which I do hope you is, I talked all week about this Roku. In fact, it was in last week's market mutterings. I said, Roku is my name. And I said, if it could just get up through this. Well, it didn't work. It didn't work to start with. It just sold off the next day. Then it comes rallying back, and I'm like, okay, I think we're going to get another shot. This 63.50 was big, and we did a really good job in the trade room of catching this one at 63.50. They don't always work that way where you're just like, it's really obvious, I want you. And it was a good one and had a great move. Now, the reason I'm bringing back up is because it actually closed at its highs, over the daily chart highs, which was what my original target was. You got to be looking for this as possible follow through going into next week. If you just take a look at SQ, I'm going to give it like it's got that SQ-esque type of look to it. Now, if you go back here, this is how it was with SQ. It just kind of broke out through the highs, and then once it kind of cleared that high, you got this big, massive run. So maybe that's something we see in Roku. I don't know if it's going to be this stout, but watch it. It's a good-looking stock. It's at high. It's bucked the market trend, so it's worthy of watching a little bit of that Roku to see if it will make it higher. Now, I got to share this one with you guys. I have no idea what in the hell is going to have to take place in our environment, in the world that we live in, that's ever going to make Pacey go down. I don't know what this thing is on, but it's on fire. I know that. That's it. Now, I've talked about this a lot, and I've traded it very little in relation to how much I've run my mouth about this thing. I mean, look at this massive run. It has one sell-off day. Now, we bought this sell-off here. We're like, yeah, and it was just so cheesy. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. It didn't work like I wanted it to. Then 2 days later, it's just bonsais right back to high. I mean, here you are. You got to be looking at this one again here too. It just does not want to die. The breakout on this here on the daily is 156.30 area. Just look where it sits. It's right there. So keep an eye on this Pacey. It looks like it wants to do it. It's like a little Wayfair. Well, not like a little Wayfair. It's just like it's the same as Wayfair. And the last, I'm going to throw a little bit of iRobot, the IRBT, IRBT. Let me put it up here. I'm going to watch this one for a bounce. I'm going to admit that I got kind of, I don't want to say smoked because it wasn't bad. I lost a little bit of money on this one this week because it was one of the stocks that I talked about that it shook off a downgrade. I think it was Wednesday. One of those days. Then the next day the market sells off and it goes down and bounces right back. So it shook off a market sell-off and then a downgrade. And then it turns around and just sells off on Thursday for shits and giggles, I guess. Just down it goes. And it went down all freaking day on Thursday. I mean, it's just like, it never, look at this. It's just melting. But anyway, I think right now what you've got to get is a follow through going over 105.22. Then maybe you can start to see this thing trade back to some of this red. It's still a speculation play. I don't know. It's pretty ugly there on Thursday, but we'll see. So anyway, guys, you got yourself a few names there. Looking at the Apple, Tesla, Roku, Pacey, and iRobot. Again, names, they are subject to change depending on the market. As always, if you need help, feel free to reach out to me. I want to thank you for watching this week's edition of Market Mutterings. Trade well. I'll talk to everyone next week. Take care.